Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Alex, and today we are going to go over all of the topics from this semester. Let's begin with manner adverbs versus adjectives. So let's begin here at the top, and let's see how we can use manner adverbs and adjectives. Here we can see that we have the structure verb plus manner adverb. For example, we have here an example, and it says, I wait patiently in line. As you can see, we have the manner adverb, which is going to describe how the action is done. In this case, the verb is wait. So I wait patiently. Another example is he doesn't sing very well. Again, we have the adverb right here, which is at the end, and we're going to use it to describe the action or the verb, which is sing. Finally, the last example that we have is she drives very fast. This is an exception because fast is actually going to be the same as an adjective, but it's also an adverb. So we call this an irregular adverb. So make sure to follow the structure of verb plus manner adverb when we want to describe an action. The other part or the other structure that we have here is adjectives plus noun. And we have a few examples to demonstrate. The first one is, I'm a patient person. In this case, we have adjective, which is going to be patient, and we have person, which is going to be the noun, okay? Another example is, he's not a good singer. He's a fast driver. All of these are examples of adjectives plus a noun. Remember that fast is going to be also an adjective and an adverb, okay? As you can see, we have two different types of adverbs. We have regular adverbs and irregular adverbs. For example, patient, patiently, careful, carefully, easy, easily. All of these follow the rule of adding ly to the end of the adjective, as you can see here. Patiently, carefully, and easily. So it's just the regular adjective plus the ly. However, not all adjectives or adverbs follow this spelling rule. We do have some irregular adverbs. For example, good, well, late doesn't change at all, and it remains late. And the same thing goes for fast. It's the adjective and the adverb form. So you have to make sure that you're going to position it in the right location. Okay, fast, fast. Make sure to practice. Let's see what we have next. Here we have some examples of some other manner adverbs, okay? Let's see what we have next. The next part is going to be adverbs before adjectives and adverbs. For example, it says, use incredibly, extremely, very, really, so, pretty, and fairly to make some adjectives and adverbs stronger. Here we have an example. It says, Maria is incredibly talented. she's extremely generous. Or Juan's a pretty cool guy. We get along really well. So as you can see here, we have the adverb plus the adjective. Again, that's the adverb plus the adjective, right? So make sure to pay attention to the location. Another way that we can use adverbs is with strong adjectives. So for strong adjectives, we want to make sure that we use absolutely or really with adjectives that are already strong. An example of an already strong adjective could be wonderful, or let's highlight this, could be wonderful or fantastic. So for adjectives that are already strong, we want to use absolutely or really. For example, she's absolutely wonderful. He's really fantastic. Another form or another modifier that we can use is using at all. So the expression at all makes negative much stronger. For example, Susan's not selfish at all. Mario's not upset at all. In this case, this would be a strong negative, right? So we could say not selfish at all, or not upset at all. So it's like saying 0%. And finally, the last form that we're going to use is the adverbs completely and totally when we want to express 100%. For example, he's completely honest. She's totally reliable. So you can see we have the adjective, right? And we also have the adverb before it to express 100%, right? Completely honest, totally reliable. So pay attention to the different uses of adverbs and the adjectives. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the present perfect. So for the present perfect, remember, we always have to use the auxiliary have or has. We have three different forms that we have here on the screen. We have the affirmative, the negative, and the interrogative. So we have subject plus the auxiliary plus the past participle form of the verb. As you can see, pronoun plus have or has plus the past participle. For example, I have played. In the negative form, it would be I haven't played. And in the interrogative, it's going to be have I played. Make sure that you are inverting the subject and the pronoun, the pronoun and the auxiliary when you're asking yes and no questions. For all of these yes and no questions, we always answer yes, I have, or no, I haven't, always using the same form of have. If it's third person, for example, he has played, he hasn't played, the answer to has he played is now exactly the same. Yes, she has. No, she hasn't. So here you can see all of the different pronouns. Remember that for third person, he, she, it, we have to use has. All of the other pronouns we use have. The present perfect, remember, is going to be used for experiences. Something that happened in the past and is not specific. So make sure that the present perfect is not for completed actions or maybe something that was a habit in the past. The present perfect is used for experiences, okay? Non-specific. So let's continue. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the comparatives and superlatives. So as you can see, we have a spelling rule that we're going to use for superlatives and comparatives. For short words that are one syllable or ending in the letter Y, we're going to eliminate the Y and add IER for comparatives, or we're going to eliminate the Y and add IEST for superlatives. So I know this is a little bit small, but you can see friendly and friendlier is the comparative form because it ends in the letter Y. We change the Y to an I plus add ER. If it's the superlative form, we're going to change the Y to an I and add EST. For example, healthy, the healthiest. Happy, the happiest. Make sure that for superlatives, you guys are using the article the, okay? The next rule is one syllable ending with one vowel and one consonant. When this is the case, we want to make sure to repeat the final consonant. For example, big, it ends in an I, which is a vowel, and a consonant, which is the letter G. So we're going to repeat the final consonant. So we have to make it GGER, big, bigger, fit, fitter, wet, wetter, okay? For regular adjectives, we're just going to add ER for comparatives. For example, cheap, cheaper, weak, weaker, old, older. And if it's a regular one-syllable adjective for the comparative, remember we're going to add EST and we're just going to add the. So the longest, the tallest, okay? And please be careful because both comparatives and superlatives have irregular adjectives. Good becomes better, bad changes to worse, far can be further or farther, and the same goes for the superlative. Good becomes the best, bad changes to the worst, far the furthest or the farthest, okay? So make sure to memorize the spelling rules and don't forget that we're always going to use the article the for superlatives, okay? There is one more thing that we have to cover, and that is long or big adjectives. How are they long? How do we consider them to be long? When they are two or more syllables. So if they are two or more syllables, make sure that you are not adding EST or ER. You're actually only going to add the word more in front of the adjective. For example, exciting becomes more exciting. Boring becomes more boring. Dangerous, more dangerous, okay? And for the superlative is going to be the plus most. So exciting, the most exciting, boring, the most boring, and dangerous, the most dangerous, okay? Remember that superlatives is going to be for 3 or more subjects and comparative is only for 2 subjects, okay? Make sure to practice. The next thing that we're going to talk about is used to. Used to is for the past. Here we have the introduction, which says use used to for regular activities or situations in the past that don't happen now or are no longer true. For example, I used to go over to my sister's house a lot. The five of us used to play on a team. I didn't used to work so much, but now I do. So as you can see, it's going to be used to plus the base form of the verb. Remember, this has to be a habit or something that was a habit in the past and no longer is true in the present. Make sure that you use the regular form of the verb after used to. Here we have a question. It says, did you used to go out a lot when you were younger? And we could answer by saying something like, I used to go to the park with my friends, right? And exactly the same structure, used to, plus the regular form of the verb, right? And because this is a yes and no question, make sure that you guys can answer yes, I did, or no, I didn't, and then we can give additional information, right? Yes, I did. No, I didn't. And then we can give the additional information by continuing to give more information, okay? So just remember that used to is for regular activities or situations in the past that are no longer true in the present. Very well. Let's erase and let's continue. We have a lot to cover today. So the next topic is going to be countable and uncountable nouns. Let's begin by talking about uncountable nouns. Remember, uncountable nouns are things or objects that we can't physically count one by one. When we have these uncountable nouns, we have to use the determiners or the quantifiers little, much, and less. For example, we have a little butter in the fridge. There's not much food in the house. Or I am trying to eat less fat. These guys are going to be how we can express the quantity, right? So quantifiers tell us how much. There's a little butter in the fridge. There's not much food in the house. Or I am trying to eat less fat. Remember that little, much, and less are going to be for uncountable nouns. For countable nouns, we want to use a few, fewer, and many. And here we have a couple examples. We have a few slices of cheese. Skim milk has fewer calories. And finally, there are many vegetables on this pizza. So now, because it's countables, now we have to use a few slices, right? A few slices, fewer calories, or many vegetables, right? And it also goes in the order of from least to kind of comparison, and maybe you could say a small quantity, right? So a few, maybe 3, 4, fewer is less, and many is a lot, okay? So make sure to practice the difference between uncountables and countable nouns. Next, we have the future. So when we talk about the future, we actually have 2 different structures that we can use. So the first one is going to say, if you are making a future prediction based on evidence in the present situation, use going to. Keyword, it says a future prediction based on evidence. So if it is something based on evidence, then we can use going to make a prediction. For example, not a cloud in the sky. It's going to be another warm day. Look at that line. We're not going to get in for hours. The traffic is terrible. We're going to miss our flight. Be careful. You're not going to, be careful. You're going to spill your coffee. So all four of these examples, there is some visual or some physical evidence that you can see that is going to help you make a prediction about the future. For example, you don't see a cloud in the sky, so you can assume or you can predict that it's going to be a nice day, a warm day. However, we can also use will. Will is going to be used for decisions that we make at the moment. Okay, so for decisions that we make at the moment, we're going to use will. Once you have made the decision, talk about using going to, or you can continue the conversation by using going to. For example, I'll call Jenny to let her know. Sarah, I need Jenny's number. I'm going to call her about the meeting. So you can see that the first action happened at the moment. I'll call Jenny, right? And then we continue to talk about this situation by now using going to. So at the moment, will, and then we can continue by using going to. For example, another example could be, I'll come and have a drink with you, but I must let Harry know. Harry, I'm going to have a drink with Simon. So once something is established, once you have a plan, then you can continue to use going to. But at the moment of speaking, make sure to use will. Down here, we have an example that I'm going to share with you. So let's read the example down here. Remember, this is a decision that I have made. Today, I am going to drive my new motorcycle. Then I'm going to phone my best friend. And finally, I'm going to read my favorite novel. Once you have a plan, you can use going to talk about your plans in the future. Remember, we are always going to use the verb to be, is, am, are, plus going to, and the base form of the verb. Whether you use going to or will, both of them are going to be followed by the base form, the regular form of the verb, okay? So make sure to practice. Remember, if you have any questions, any concerns, you can always email your tutor so that he or she can assist you with any doubts you may be having, okay? So let's erase and let's continue. Here we continue with going to and will. Let's see. It says, if we are not so certain about the future, we use will with expressions such as probably, possibly, I think, or I hope. So let's take a look at the examples. I hope you'll visit me in my home one day. She'll probably be a great success. I'll possibly come, but I may not get back in time. I think we'll get along well. So when we're not certain, when it's a possibility, you can use the expressions, I hope you will, she probably, She'll probably be, I'll possibly come, right? So we want to make sure that we're using the expression, right? With I hope, probably, possibly, and I think, okay? All of these can be used with will if you're not sure. And we have one more example here. In the future, we will have friends from other planets. So give it a try and try giving some examples using will when you're not sure, something that's a possibility, right? So maybe you can try practicing that before your final exam. The next thing that we're going to talk about is relative clauses. So let's begin by reading the introduction here. Relative clauses give more information or details about who or what you are talking about. So in this case, we can see an example here that says, Nina is the woman that sits across from me. The subject is going to be Nina. The relative clause is going to be that. And we give some additional information about Nina. So always when we want to give some additional information, we use the relative clauses to give some additional information. Let's take a look at the next example. Pablo is my neighbor who lives down the street from me. Again, Pablo is the subject. We use the relative clause who, which is going to give us some more information that Pablo lives down the street. And finally, we have Juan. Juan has a brand new red sports car, which is parked right next to the guard's booth. There are three relative clauses that we are using here. The first one that we used is going to be that. Let's change that color. That or which is going to be used for objects. And we're going to use who for people, okay? So make sure that you use the relative clause that or which for objects and use who for people, okay? Always to add additional information. It's a great way to connect two clauses or two ideas, or to just give some additional information about the person or the thing that you are talking about. Let's erase and let's continue. The next one is going to be wishes and imaginary situations. So let's take a look at what this is all about. We can use wishes for the present or the future. The structure that we're going to use is wish plus the past form of the verb. And some examples of this could be, I wish I had more free time. If this wish were to become true, then we can continue to talk about the result or what would happen if this were to become reality. So now we can use if plus the past form of the verb, and we can use would or the modal verb could plus the base form of the verb. So it sounds something similar to this. I wish I had more free time. If I had more free time, I would go camping. Remember, we can use would or could, depending on exactly what you wish to express. They're very, very similar. Could for possibilities, maybe would for imaginary situations, okay? Another example down here is, I wish I weren't so busy with my work. If I were less busy, I would go on vacation. So again, We have I wish I had, the simple past. If I had, the simple past, okay? So remember that wish and if is always followed by the simple past. Excuse me. When we want to ask questions about imaginary situations or events, we can ask a question in the following way. What would you do if you broke a friend's camera? So in this case, we have WH question plus would plus the subject plus the verb, okay? So what would you do if you broke your friend's camera? And we have some possible answers. I would apologize for breaking it. I would pay for the repairs, right? So you have two possible answers, and we can use would plus the possible outcome, okay? If it's a yes and no question, then we're just going to begin with the modal verb would. So would plus subject plus the verb. Would you pay for a new one? And because it's a yes and no question, we're going to answer, yes, I would, no, I wouldn't. So wishes and imaginary situations. Very, very useful when you want to have an interesting conversation. You can talk about possibilities and a ton of different situations. So make sure to practice and remember to use the simple past for wish and if, okay? The next thing that we're going to talk about is embedded questions. So embedded questions is a way that we can change a direct question, like we have here. We have direct questions. For example, what is the problem? That is a direct question. It's a straightforward question, very simple. But we can also add another question to it, which is going to be called an embedded question once we put them together. So we can say, what's the problem? Do you know what the problem is? And notice how the verb to be is now inverted with the subject, right? So we switch the verb to be and the problem. Another example could be, which site did you use? Do you remember which site you used? What should we do? Do you know what we should do? Notice how they continue to switch the verb and the modal verb in this case. And then finally, what time is it? Do you know what time it is? And again, you can see here that we're going to switch, okay? So you have what time is it? So the verb to be plus the object. And in this case, we have the object plus the verb, okay? Here we have should we, and here we have we should. So notice how we're going to invert the direct question and the embedded question, okay? They're going to be a little bit different, so make sure to practice and don't make the simple mistake of using it as a regular question, okay? It's also a more polite way when you want to ask a question. These embedded questions, the ones that we have on the right, are a more polite way. When you don't want to be so direct or so blunt, you can kind of ask in a lighter manner, okay? The next thing we're going to talk about is the present perfect continuous. And here we have an interesting chart or diagram on the right which is going to tell us that the structure that we use is has been or have been, whether it's third person or not, plus the present participle, okay? Now, remember that the present participle is the ing form of the verb. So we have a couple occasions when we use the present perfect continuous. The first one is going to be an activity that started in the past and continues in the present. Another one could be an activity that started in the past and recently finished. So it came to an end, but it was ongoing for a period of time in the past. So pay attention to this diagram and make sure to use it the next time you want to use the present perfect continuous. Here I have some examples that I want to share with you. The first one is, I have been waiting for the English teacher for the last half an hour. So, as you can see, we have been because the subject is I, and then we have the continuous form of the verb, waiting, okay? I have been waiting. This is the structure that we want to use in the present perfect continuous. Another example, you have been studying English all day. Again, you can see it's going to be have been studying. So the ing form of the verb and always with have been. That does not change. The only thing that changes is going to be third person. So for he, she, it, we have to make sure that we change the auxiliary. So my neighbor has been singing for the last hour, and she sings horribly. So make sure to don't make that mistake of using have instead of changing it to has for third person. And finally, another example with has is the rainstorm has been getting worse and worse. Now notice how this is an action that started in the past and is going to gradually continue in the present or on to the future maybe, okay? So just memorize the structure, which is has been or have been plus the present participle, which remember is the ing form of the verb, okay? The next thing that we're going to talk about is modal verbs for speculating. So here we have a few examples. Mary knows everything. She must be a genius. So here we have a modal verb, must be a genius. We use must when we are sure about something. We're not 100% sure because this is a speculation, but we're pretty sure, we're pretty confident and certain that this is something true. So we can use must, which is like the strongest of the modal verbs. The next example is George seems tired. He must work pretty hard. And because we're looking at him, we can see that he's a little drowsy, he's a little tired. We're sure, or we're pretty certain that he must work pretty hard. Another example, but this one is in negative, says, Sue looks bored. She must not go out much. So again, we have some visual evidence, so we can make a certain speculation that she's bored. Maybe she's kind of falling asleep or she's playing with a pencil or something. So we have some visual evidence. The next one is going to be can't. So can't is a little bit stronger in the negation when compared to must not, because now we're like very certain that this could not be or cannot be true. So the example says, I don't think she's 40. I mean, she can't be older than 25. And finally, the last one is going to be, I'm not sure, but he may be the professor. And may or might are going to be like the possibles, right? When we're not sure, we're in the middle, whether it could or might not be, we're going to use maybe, okay? So if we had to put these on a scale, we would say something like must is going to be when we are 99% sure, certain about something, right? Can't is obviously the opposite. So if we say can't be or must be, we're going to say that this is like the opposite. So maybe there's a small possibility. And the last one, which may be may or might, this is going to be like 50-50. We're not sure. We're in the middle. We really don't know which way to go. So this is 50-50, okay? So remember, must be, we're sure. Can't be is the total opposite because now it's negative. May and might is when we're in the middle. It could be, it might not be. We're stuck in the middle, okay? So make sure to practice, guys. Let's talk about adjectives ending in ed versus ing. They're actually very common, but sometimes students don't really understand what's the difference between an adjective ending in ed, and they think it's a verb in the past, but it's not a verb. It's actually an adjective. So it says adjectives ending in ed can describe how you feel about someone or something. For example, I'm bored with my job. I'm interested in astronomy. So if we take a look, we have adjective plus ed, bored, interested plus ed, and this is an adjective describing the feeling of a person, right? So how you feel about someone or something, right? The most important is the feeling that you're expressing about someone or something. The other option is adjectives that end in ing. In this case, adjectives that end in ing are used to describe someone or something. So this is a description, and now it is no longer a feeling. It's just a description of someone or something. For example, it says, my job is very boring. I think astronomy is interesting. And notice how the adjective is now ending in ing instead of ed. This picture that we have on the left is actually a great example where you can see the man has an opinion or a feeling about his state. He is bored. It's his feeling, so we're going to use ed. On the other hand, we have a stack of books, and these books we are going to describe with ing because they are boring, right? These books are boring. So maybe you can kind of take a look at this picture, and that can help you understand a little better, okay? So don't confuse them. Ed adjectives for feelings. And when we want to describe something or someone, we use the ing form of the adjective, okay? Let's take a look at the next one. The passive voice is often used in news reports, in the newspaper, when information is being reported, okay? So let's take a look at what passive voice is. Here it says, The active voice occurs when something is being done to the subject of a sentence. So we have the subject, and then we have an action that's being done, or something is being done to the subject, right? Down here, it goes on to tell us, or give us two examples, which says, the donut was devoured by Homer Simpson. Kenny is being punched by Cartman. So the donut is actually receiving an action. And Kenny is actually being punched. So he's like the victim here. So we're focusing on Kenny instead of the person doing the action. We're focusing on the donut instead of the person who is eating the donut, or in this case, devouring the donut. And it says down here, notice how the subject of each example, the donut and Kenny, is passive. The subject is being acted on instead of it acting on something. So you kind of want to make sure that you understand what an active voice is. These are the passive voice. And if we were to do an active voice, let's just ignore this here for a moment, because I'm going to show you an example here. If we ignore this, this is not passive, this is going to be active. If we wanted to change this, we could say Homer Simpson devoured the donut, right? So in this case, Homer Simpson did the action, right? Homer Simpson did the action that we have here. And in this case, he's the one doing the action, right? If we take a look at the second one, so Homer Simpson devoured the donut. This is the active sentence. And this is the passive sentence here. Notice how we have the subject plus the verb plus the complement. In the passive voice, we have the object or the thing or person that's receiving the action plus the verb to be plus the past participle form of the verb, okay? So active sentences, maybe we could put here, subject plus verb plus complement is going to be the regular form. Let's change this to blue. Here we have the structure. This is an active sentence. Now, if we go over and we take a look at what the passive is, we can see that now it's a little bit different. Now we're actually going to have the object receiving the action, right? So this is the object receiving the action plus the verb to be plus the past participle of the verb. And then if we want, we can use by the doer of the action, right? And that's exactly what we have over here, right? This is the passive voice. So this is the structure for the passive voice. As you can see here, it says the object is the donut, right? The object. The verb to be in the past, which is was, the past participle, which is devoured, and then if we want, it's not necessary, but if we want, we can include the, maybe we put here, possible, maybe if we want, we can include the doer of the action, okay? So maybe if we make this color-coded, you could see the object is in blue, the donut. The verb to be can be in green. and the past participle will make an orange, so you can actually see how this active sentence was changed into the passive voice. So here we have the active sentence. Homer Simpson devoured the donut. This is the regular sentence, subject, verb, complement. And then we have the active sentence, which is the donut was devoured by Homer Simpson. Okay? Make sure to practice, make sure to only include the doer of the action if it's absolutely necessary. If not, the majority of the time, it's actually omitted. We don't include it, and we can just say the donut was devoured, okay? So let's erase, and on this next slide, I would like to show you the different passive voice. So let's take a look at the different tenses. So the active voice, he delivers the letters. This is in the present simple, so subject, verb, complement. And the passive, remember now we focus on the receiver of the action. So in this case, the letters are being acted upon. So the letters are delivered, always with the verb to be and the past participle form. And this continues for all of the tenses. In the past, he delivered the letters were delivered. In the future, we can use will. He will deliver the letters will be delivered. And we can do one more, which is the continuous form. He is delivering the letters. And because it's the continuous, we have to use the verb to be and the ing. So the letters are being delivered. But notice how all of the verbs are going to be in the past participle, okay? So always with the verb to be and always in the past participle. Okay, guys, I hope that you guys were able to get a better understanding of everything that we have seen this semester. It was my pleasure to help you. Remember, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always email your tutor. We are here to help you. Best of luck. Make sure to practice a lot, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.